Well, hello, classmates. My name is Timothy Carvello, and like you, I am pursuing my master's in graphic design here at SCAD. And today I want to discuss a topic that has been of interest to me for a while now, and that topic is design style. So, why should we be discussing this? What, in fact, is design style, and what does that term even mean? Well, I became interested in styles early on in my career as a designer. After I graduated from art school, I began working in various local ad agencies, and being new to the industry, I listened and I wanted to learn as much as I could, taking feedback and direction from my art director as well as other more experienced designers in the shop. As time went on, and I worked on projects of various types, I noticed a common technique emerge as I received direction and feedback from my coworkers: the use of style terms in describing designs. I would be given direction to create a retro look on one project or to add some Victorian elements on another. I would be given feedback like my font selection needed to be more high end, things like that. And while being a new creative and not wanting to show my inexperience to my coworkers or that I didn't pay enough attention in art history class, I did what anyone does in that situation. I smiled and nodded, and then I ran back to my computer and looked them up. As I began to research these terms, I found that some were pretty straightforward, had clear definitions, time periods, and characteristics that made them up, while others had multiple definitions and weren't so clear at all. So what does all this mean? Why should we care? Well, that is what I began to investigate for this literature review. Why design styles are important and to whom? What are people saying and writing about design styles? And what does design style actually mean? Well, to start off, to understand what design style is in graphic design terms, we need to start by understanding what each word means. The definition of design, or in our terms, graphic design, is a topic of much debate recently, and I, however, found that the definition of graphic design provided by an article entitled "What is Graphic Design" on the AIGA website really resonated with me. In this article, the author says that graphic design is a creative process that combines art and technology to communicate ideas. The designer works with a variety of communication tools in order to convey a message from a client to a particular audience, and the main tools are image and typography. Well, that seems pretty clear and concise, and I think that most designers would agree with some form of that definition. But style on the other hand, seems to be all over the place and really depends on who you're talking to. Style can mean so many things. How do we boil this down and apply it to our field of graphic design? Well, the author Stephen Heller does a great job of defining this in his book Graphic Style, where he says that style is a specific or characteristic manner of expression, design, construction, or execution, the dominant visual aesthetic of a particular time and place. And Paul Rand puts it this way in his book, Good Design is Goodwill. He says that a style is the consequence of recurrent habits, restraints, or rules. So, what is design style? If we think of these words design and style in those terms, then design style refers to the characteristics of a visual. These recurrent habits, rules, and restraints turn into a set of expected types of visuals that have certain characteristics that define a style, and it's more than just a surface look. By engaging in a style, you also communicate the ideas, values, and notions that were popular at that time. Well, who uses design styles? Several industries use design styles: fashion, interior design, architecture, advertising, and of course graphic design all use design styles and terms when discussing and presenting their work. And this is helpful in a variety of ways. First, it creates a common vernacular between creatives to discuss the work that they're engaging in. Second, it provides a historical foundation and it's infused with values and ideas of a time period. When used appropriately, it works to communicate a concept in a deeper way to an audience. And last, it's an avenue for fulfilling a communication strategy and meeting client goals. For our industry, as designers, understanding what design styles are will help us to be more relevant by being able to recognize emerging styles and communicating better with coworkers and clients about underlying meanings and concepts. Overall, it'll help us to produce better work. Eureka! So now that we understand what design styles are and who uses them, let's look at how this topic is being discussed in contemporary literary resources. In my research, I found that there is actually far less written about this subject than I would have imagined. And most of what is written about it is rather broad and hasn't been brought into the graphic design context. Overall, I found that there were three current themes in literature for discussing design style. The first was theory, which is a generalized discussion about design style across all industries, not specifically about graphic design. The second was culture, and this is a discussion about design as it relates to pop culture, its influence on pop culture, and vice versa. And the third was a historical context, discussing design styles as it relates to history and art movements, and this is where many of our terms for design styles come from. These historical overviews are the most helpful to your everyday designer and touch upon the common styles used in a professional studio. Let's take a look at a short list of common design style terms. And this is just a short list. There's many more and new ones emerging as well. Design style influences. Through these historical overviews, we can learn quite a bit about the background of a particular influence of each style as well. Author Stephen Heller says that style is the graphic imprint of an age. Many elements work to influence design styles. Major ones like history and art work together to establish the major characteristics of a particular style. Other major influences are location and time period. The color palette, fonts, flourishes, imagery, and illustration style all comes from a symphony of elements that were popular at a given time and place in history. These four major contributors fall under an umbrella called the popular culture of the day. Well, with all this research on the topic of design style, it's impossible to overlook the problems that exist. First, much of what I've presented is subjective, and it's open to being challenged from various viewpoints and opinions. There is little written on the subject, and what has been written, it does very little to visually define how these styles can be used in a contemporary design challenge. Additionally, without authoritative sources on the subject, there's confusion about these terms and what each of them mean. Commonly used terms like vintage or retro, for example, have unclear definitions and crossover usages in the industry. Lastly, the word style itself is open to interpretation. Often the word style is confused with other words like theme or trend. So what's next? As I go deeper into exploring this topic, I will discuss why it is important for designers to know established design styles and how they can recognize emerging ones. I'll also be describing the differences between the terms that are commonly confused and the ones used synonymously with style. And lastly, I will go into detail on what type of additional resources are needed on the subject for contemporary designers. Well, thank you very much for listening, and I hope that this presentation has sparked some interest in further discussion on this topic.